Hey YouTubers, I call this meeting of the Jon Snow Truthers to order. Just careful for spoilers if you haven't seen episode 2 yet, so here we go. Biggest surprise of the episode was they did the thing this soon. Totally was not expecting this to happen for at least another episode or two, just because of some of the big reveals we know are coming, like Tower of Joy for instance. Now you can go to all your friends who do not believe in R plus L equals J and just start pointing towards like, look at this evidence. See, everything is lining up. All the stuff they seeded in season 5. So I'll explain all that stuff as we go through top 10 WTF. But lots of big stuff happening. We met Euron Greyjoy for the first time. It's going to be so much fun. I am the storm. So let's go. Number 10, Weirwood flashback number 1. We get to see young Ned fighting young Brandon Stark, his older brother. Lyanna Stark shows up, so we finally see her in number 9 WTF. She's a complete badass, so if anybody believes in the theory of the Knight of the Laughing Tree, that Lyanna Stark defeated a bunch of assholes in the tournament to defend the honor of Howland Reed. There were a bunch of people at the tourney of Harrenhal. I know we've talked about that a lot because there was R plus L equals J stuff going on there. Robert Baratheon was there. Elia Martell was there, Rhaegar's wife, that was Oberyn's sister, the one that the Mountain murdered. We're going to talk about him in a second too. But it's this really cool story about how a bunch of squires were giving Howland Reed, who was really young at the time, a bunch of shit, and a knight who was wearing the sigil of a tree unhorsed them all, like beat the crap out of all of them. But it was a mystery. Nobody could find out who the knight was. So one of the big theories is that it was Lyanna Stark, and she was a complete badass. Also adding fuel to the R plus L equals J theory. Forget about the other stuff that was happening there, because if she was that badass of a fighter, then how could Rhaegar have taken her against her will? So it's not like she was kidnapped. So we can talk more about that in episode 3, because that's going to be the Tower of Joy flashback. Going to be a whole bunch of Lyanna Stark all over that place. So just try to hold your breath till next week for that. Mira's back, and we meet a new Child of the Forest. I think it's Leaf, the same Child of the Forest from previous seasons. They've just recast it and done more makeup. Like they've changed the Night's King. This Night's King is the same person from season 5 to 6, but the actor playing him has changed. The makeup has changed a little bit. So I think that's what's going on with the Child of the Forest here. Just because in the books, the Child of the Forest that serves the Three-Eyed Raven is named Leaf. So if you're confused as to why it looks like a different person, that's probably why. They just recast the actor and just beefed up the makeup. The real big change is Willis. Now that was a really cool reveal moment because it's like, oh my god, is she talking to me? But then he looks through and it's Hodor as a kid. Now what they've done is they've changed his name from the books. In the books he's called Walder, as in Walder Frey, because that's the area of Westeros that he's from. It's rumored that he might be a Frey through his mother's side of the family, but George R.R. Martin hasn't revealed that yet. So he's Willis on the TV show and Walder in the books. But number 8 WTF, so much amazing Winterfell stuff happening. Ramsay Bolton kills Roose Bolton, then in rapid succession kills Walda and his little brother. You know, I really prefer being an only child. The minute that Roose died, I felt like we all knew what was going to happen to Walda and that baby. We just didn't know how it was going to happen. Like there was that crazy atmospheric music where he was just standing there holding the baby. You're just like, please don't let him hold the baby. But then he gives it back. So you're like, oh, okay. But the minute she goes into the kennel, I was like, yeah, she's definitely not coming out of here. But they kind of did the Sansa thing last season, you know, where Ramsay does something really terrible to a character, now doing it to Walda with the dogs. They cut away and look at Ramsay's face. You could make the argument that that's even worse because your brain can come up with something that's way more terrible than what the TV show could do. And it also sidesteps some censorship issues, even though there's not a lot of censorship on HBO. But number 7, 1-1 versus the mutinous Night's Watch. Such a great moment, and you could definitely tell that Alistair Thorne never intended to let them live. There was all those crossbows trained on the door. The minute they would have walked out, they'd have been dead. It's such a Three Little Pigs moment where you hear this knocking at the door and it just stops them all cold in their tracks like, wait a minute, what's that sound? And then like Jaws breaking the surface of the water, he just busts right through the door and promptly, boom, they all just drop their weapons. It was so funny. Not the funniest moment in the episode, but definitely one of the funniest. Funniest moment, number 6 WTF, is the zombie mountain getting his feet pissed on as he just bashed that dude's skull. Not even breaking stream. That's an old classic. Sometimes you'll see that in cop movies where like a cop goes to arrest a drunk person and the drunk person just turns around and pisses all over their shoes like, oh, god damn it. Number 5 WTF, of course, is the standoff between Jaime and the High Sparrow. Like, you can definitely see that there's a war brewing in King's Landing. When he says, we could overthrow an empire, he's basically telling Jaime, we could overthrow the crown if we wanted to, so you're welcome to try and kill me. So it's only going to continue to build. Then you have Tommen, who feels completely ineffectual, who might try to rally, but I love the look on Cersei's face here. You can tell she's hiding something from him. Like, she has her own violent plan that's brewing that she's just not telling him about. Like, oh, it's okay, Tommen, you know, don't worry, you did what you could. Remember, she and Jaime are twins, so I'm wondering if they have the same murder face. Like, this is Jaime's murder face that he's wearing when he's talking to the High Sparrow. I wonder if Cersei's murder face looks the same. Number 4, WTF. Arya finally passes one of her big tests. Now she's going back into the House of Black and White, going to continue to learn how to become a faceless person. That doesn't necessarily mean her eyesight's going to come back right away, but she's really close. And as you can tell, they've been pushing into a lot more mythology on the show, especially with the Melisandre stuff. So they're going to continue to do that with the Many-Faced God and Arya's storyline. We'll learn a little bit more about their techniques, a little bit more about their magic. There's a supernatural aspect to what they do, so hopefully we'll get to see that in action just a little bit. But number 2, WTF, meet Euron Greyjoy. I don't fear the storm because I am the storm. So he is now the antagonist of that storyline. He's going to be like the person that Yara Greyjoy has to defeat, because even if you didn't feel like it before, you're definitely going to walk away from this feeling like she's the underdog. Like she had that speech with Balon. I don't care what happened to Theon. He's still my baby brother. She had all these noble intentions. Balon's like, screw that. We'll march wherever I want to march. We'll try and take whatever I want to take. So right now she seems like she's the only character in that storyline that really cares about her fellow Ironborn. Like, she doesn't want them to die. She doesn't want to do anything that's senseless. We can take anyone at sea. We're not so hot on the land. The big book scene that they did was Balon Greyjoy dying on the bridge. But in the books, a lot of people believed that it was a faceless person that killed him instead of Euron Greyjoy. So the TV show's just simplified it a little bit, and it's made it easier to see Euron Greyjoy as the villain of this storyline. Just in the way that he has that megalomaniacal speech. I am a god. They fear me from Old Town to Karth, basically making him seem like the Ramsay Bolton of this storyline. So they said it out loud. You know it's coming. Kingsmoot, brace thyself. It's going to be awesome. Number 2, WTF. Tyrion is a friend to dragons. He is like a fun-sized Snicker bar just standing right here. I know a lot of you were wondering because the way they cut the trailer made it seem like he got roasted like a certain character does in the books. There's a book storyline where the dragons get released, but the character is someone that the TV show cuts out, so just assume that they didn't do that storyline because what happened on the TV show is just completely different from start to finish. So I'll say it right now, everyone's going to ask, does Tyrion being able to get close to the dragons mean that he's a Targaryen? Is that why they're so nice to him? Is that why they don't roast him alive? No. As Tyrion says, they're intelligent, they recognize their friends. I'm a friend of your mother, so I think they're just picking up on that. They sense that he's not a threat to them. It also probably helps that he's such a small person. If the zombie mountain had come in to let them out, they probably wouldn't have been so nice to him. But the interesting thing about this isn't so much that he releases them and is like, dude, punch me if I ever think to do that again. It's that the dragons don't do anything. They cut away from that scene, so you don't know what happens. But of course, they're teasing that the dragons are going to get out because it's like, well, they don't do well in captivity. He's really only just unchained them. They're still inside that cage at the base of the pyramid. So of course, biggest WTF. Jon Snow came back at the end of episode 2. How many of you did not expect him to come back till much later? I wasn't expecting him till episode 3, episode 4, but now we know that Sansa is on her way to the Wall, so maybe we'll get our first Stark reunion. That'll be awesome. In the teaser for next week's episode, we hear Tormund Giantsbane's voice saying, they think that you're a god, so everybody's just going to be in awe of what happened. So part of next week's episode will be all the Brothers of the Night's Watch and the Wildlings making this face. Oh my god, I can't believe it happened. You came back. I did a whole bunch of videos last season explaining resurrection on the show. There's a couple different ways that characters get brought back from the dead. White Walkers have their own version of resurrection, but it's not like the Red God resurrecting people. It's not like Lady Stoneheart. There's so many characters that come back from the dead in A Song of Ice and Fire that the chances that Jon Snow was not going to come back were so small that it was a pretty solid bet that he would come back in one form or another. The big question is how it would happen. I think most of us felt like Melisandre would be responsible. We just, we didn't know when it was going to happen, but I like the way that they made it so ritualistic. She's speaking all these formal words. She even cuts his hair a little bit. She treats the body. I love the way they use music during that scene because it kind of peters out towards the end. Like you can kind of tell Melisandre's spirit is leaving her. She's just like, I don't really believe what's going on here. I'm not really feeling this. And you get the harump from Tormund Giantsbane and everyone just leaves, the door slams. But the whole time, I'm just looking at Ghost, waiting for him to react because Ghost will go nuts if Jon Snow actually dies. Like he'll just lose his mind with grief. So because during this whole thing, Ghost is just sleeping there calmly, I was not worried at all. Even if he wasn't going to come back in this episode, it's not over till Ghost says it's over. So let me know, what was your favorite moment from the episode? Was it Ramsay just being the most terrible person ever? Was it seeing Euron Greyjoy for the first time? Was it Jon Snow finally coming back? Even though, we all expected him to come back. And let me know if you actually did bet money on Jon Snow coming back. I'd be willing to bet that there are places in Vegas where you could put down money on stuff like this, but I've never actually been crazy enough to do something like that. I think the things I'm looking forward to next week the most are the Tower of Joy flashback, Jon Snow potentially meeting Sansa just because she and Brienne are on their way to the Wall, and maybe seeing a big White Walker scene because I was actually expecting to see him in this episode, but they didn't show up. And I don't usually take the time to talk about it, which is a big mistake on my part, but Game of Thrones has some of the most beautiful exterior shots, and a lot of it's CG, so that kind of explains why it's gotten so expensive. There are 3 in particular in this episode that come to mind. 1, there's Mira looking out over the frozen north, just so calm and serene. Look at all that dead space. Enough space for someone with a giant army of White Walkers and Whites to fill. Then we have Cersei in the Red Keep looking to the Great Sept. That was actually the path that she was looking at was where she did the penance walk, her walk of shame. So it's almost like her path to war is also her penance walk. Visual metaphor, totally on point. In all this seaside Ironborn, just making up for the lack of Ironborn during season 5. It's big sweeping landscape shots like this that make you want to have a really big TV so that you can just have it on in the background silently. So giveaway, just a quick reminder, there's a new round of the giveaway happening now. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber, leave a comment on this video. If you end up winning, you can use the money to pay your friends back if you lost the bet about Jon Snow. There were a couple people, I did see comments every once in a while saying, yeah, I don't think he's coming back. But for the most part, we're all part of that truther cult. So we've all drunk the Jon Snow Kool-Aid. He is back. Now we can watch him wreck the shit out of Ramsay Bolton this season. Really, I do feel like they're pushing Ramsay in a direction to make you feel really okay with him just getting steamrolled by Jon Snow and his army. Like they want him to be completely irredeemable. Look at what he did to this little baby and this helpless mother. They were willing to go off into obscurity to live their life quietly and not challenge his authority, but he killed them anyway. So now divine justice will rain down in the form of Jon Snow and Ghost. So we're going to be screaming about this for like the next couple of days, but I'll be doing a Q&A tomorrow. So while you guys wait for me to post that, you can click here to learn more about the Night's King and White Walkers and a little bit of their history in A Song of Ice and Fire. And you can click here for my episode 1 video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.